Thank you so much, Ms. Borja, for joining us on the podcast. Roe v. Wade and abortion and reproductive rights is such an important issue, and we've actually never had the opportunity to speak about it on policy chats. We live in such a fascinating and sometimes really scary time. A lot has happened this year. Sometimes it can be so overwhelming to look back and, in the span of just 3-4 months, the lives of millions of people changed over one major decision. So before we get into the impact of the overturning of Roe, I thought it'd be really good, to get started on how we actually got here. Can you maybe outline the road to the Dobbs decision and the overturning of Roe, and what were the key moments that actually led us to this? What led us to 2022, where Roe v. Wade was overturned?
Yeah. So I'll share some of that history. Before I even go there, though, I want to make sure that the audience understands, that people understand that in California, abortion is still safe, legal, and protected. That all patients, regardless of where they're traveling from, will be able to access care at Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest. And I know that sounds like a very large comment, and it is in the point of history that we're currently in, right? And as you mentioned, the Supreme Court has indeed overturned the Roe decision. And so what is a good place to start is how we got to Roe. In the 70s, many states had already taken a stance ruling out abortion as means of healthcare, and they began to consider their laws on abortion more and more restrictive across the United States in a very individual manner. And so by 1973, the Supreme Court seemingly settled the question with two landmark rulings: Roe v. Wade, which is the more known, and the lesser known but still important Doe versus Bolton, that made terminating a pregnancy a legal right nationwide and made it so that the privacy of a person in that decision was held between the patient and their healthcare provider. And so Roe really changed the landscape in terms of abortion safety, efficacy, and availability for people across this country. And so as we've seen more and more in the most recent years, there has been a huge increase in anti-abortion laws and attacks on reproductive rights at a statewide level, and sometimes even at a local level, right? Lubbock, Texas is a sanctuary city for the unborn. We know that many states leading up to the Dobbs decision in 2022 had already put very strict abortion bans, 6-week bans, 15-week bans, and those had been challenged. By the time we got to June 24th, 2022, we had already seen 600 anti-abortion laws be introduced at a statewide level. So on June 24th, 2022, the Supreme Court rules on the Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization to uphold Mississippi 15-week ban on pregnancy. And this is what we're now saying is the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And I'll talk about this moving forward as post-Roe, post-Dobbs. And that decision really ended the federal constitutional right to abortion in the United States, protected by federal law. That means now that in one fell swoop, the Supreme Court gave that power over to each state. They took away a person's power to make their own personal medical decisions, and they gave that power over to lawmakers at a statewide level. And so that's why today, we're sitting here late October, right? That's why today the law in California looks very different than the law in Arizona, than the law in Texas, and we can keep going. And so that is one of the main reasons why it was so important for me to start off by saying in California, abortion is still safe, legal, and protected. There is a lot of confusion, right? People are traveling interstate. We have some people that live along borders and they can step into the city of Blythe in California and have their abortion rights and their healthcare protected, and then they can cross over to Phoenix, Arizona, and that no longer is the case.
Yeah, thank you so much for all that information. As you were explaining some of the other states, how far-reaching do you think the impact of having Roe overturned has been? And what options are available for those in states that have already been, abortions have already been banned?
Yeah. So the banning of Roe, the post-Dobbs world that we're living in, has created restrictions for almost 36 million women, nearly half of the women of reproductive age, what we consider 18 to 49-year-olds in the United States. People who can become pregnant have lost abortion access, healthcare access since this ruling. We are almost at an 18-state ban, and we know that in due time, it's likely that we'll get up to half of the United States completely banning access to abortion care. For us, we know that abortion access is healthcare and healthcare is a human right. And so because of that, at Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest, our state affiliates with other partners, we have been joining together. We created, it was formed by 40 different organizations, the Future of Abortion Council back in 2021. This council got together and they created 45 recommendations for California state legislatures to pass and say, this is how we protect abortion in the state of California. The work that the Future of Abortion Council has done with the Women's Caucus of California and other caucuses, along with the governor and first partner, have been instrumental in some of the laws that were passed and signed into law this past September 30th by the governor. We had a total of 56 California laws signed that protected patients who were coming from out of state to California. It protected abortion providers from getting lawsuits from states like Texas, even though they're practicing in California, right? It protected every patient in California from their medical records never becoming part of a criminal record report, right? These laws that our FAB Council said need to pass, and the fact that California state legislature said, yes, we are with you, we stand with reproductive rights, we stand for abortion access, and we're gonna work to ensure that patients in California and outside of California are protected, was a very historic moment for this state. With that being said, patients who are traveling from out of state into California seeking care are having a very difficult time, right? I'm not saying all of them, but some of the stories that we have heard from patients coming in and seeking care at Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest have really shown us how detrimental the Dobbs case and this post-Roe, post-Dobbs reality has been for many people. I'll share with you that those who cannot afford to travel to states like California are facing unbelievable challenges and choices of being forced to carry pregnancies against their will. We are seeing patients who are traveling from Arizona to California and their car breaks down and having to put whatever money they had towards a tire, right? Or towards getting their car fixed, calling us up and telling us, hey, my car broke down halfway to you. I don't know how I'm going to pay for my abortion anymore. Those are the really hard stories, right? Those are the real people who are impacted by a decision from Washington, D.C. by a decision at the state legislative level in other states. And those are the people that we're having to try and help in the many different ways that people need support. It's not just getting to a health center and receiving your abortion, right? It is a woman from Texas driving out here with her kids because she didn't want to leave her children with anyone in Texas in fear that her family members or friends might be prosecuted over the SB 8 law that puts a $10,000 bounty on anyone that helps anyone else with any kind of abortion access. We know that the ramifications of the Dobbs case for out-of-state patients has been detrimental financially, mentally, emotionally. We are hearing from many different states, a lot of them with abortion bans, how their abortion bans are affecting their state residents. And we're serving them through abortion funds, through our care coordinated teams, through our healthcare medical professionals. And it's hard to hear those stories, right? It's really challenging to say in California, we have the protections, we're going to keep working for protections, and then to see our neighbor states do quite the opposite of that and hurt their patients, hurt their constituents, and hurt their state residents.
I think that's such a powerful note. And it really puts into perspective what sometimes an unbelievable world we live in, where in California, almost 40 million people in the state, we have that access exists, those protections exist, and a bordering state, Arizona, which we border, it's like a complete 180. Texas isn't that far from us either. And so it's just, when you put it in the perspective of the geographical, you can literally be at the border of two completely different worlds, depending on your situation and circumstances. And I also think it's so important how you mentioned, it's not as easy as asking someone who lives in Mississippi or in Texas to drive or fly all the way out to California or to another state that might have those protections, but people don't take into consideration the costs. And even if they do, the other point you mentioned about how family members, depending on where they live, may actually get prosecuted for aiding their own family in that situation. It's so much more complicated and complex than just saying, well, just go to another state that has those protections. And it's amazing to hear, obviously, that California has taken that stand, and hopefully other states do that as well. But it doesn't address the heart of the issue, and the fact that there are millions of women who don't have that access, and they don't have the support, whether it's people or finances, to actually travel and actually find that access. And it's those people, like you mentioned, that are suffering and are facing challenges that it seems like there's no end. And another question I wanted to ask, you had kind of alluded to this earlier on how there was a lot of confusion. I love that you opened up with saying that, hey, abortion is still safe and legal in California. But you had alluded to the confusion that existed after the Dobbs decision. I wanted to ask, social media plays a massive role in our lives, obviously. What role do you think has social media played in terms of misinformation on the decision, on what's happened these past couple months? Do you think that confusion was more of a fear response where people were so shocked that this happened? Or was it more of, there was deliberate misinformation? Maybe there's something I'm missing here. Like, what role do you think social media and maybe traditional media as well have played in terms of the massive amount of misinformation and confusion that a lot of people have been experiencing?
I think the media and social media help sort of announce this decision from the Supreme Court. And as soon that January 24th morning, we were all glued to our phones at work. And as soon as the decision was made, a bunch of pinging was going on, right? Because we were all getting this news. And then after all of that, it was just shock. It was genuine shock. And we had to snap out of it really quickly because we needed to inform people of their access, their rights to healthcare, to abortion access in California. And so for us, social media played social media and the media played a very important and continues to play a very important and strong role in delivering the truth, in delivering information about access, in delivering stories from people, right? Hearing it from the mouth of Planned Parenthood, not the mouth of the media. That for us has been very important. When it comes to the disinformation, social media and the media have also played a very large role in sort of the snowball continuing to go down the mountain. A couple of weeks ago in the city of Temecula, Councilmember Alexander came out and said that she wanted an all-right ban in the city of Temecula on abortion. She just said the city of Temecula will be a sanctuary city for the unborn. And so there was a lot of commentary that happened right afterwards from pastors, church members, community members that was wrong and erroneous around abortion access. And that in particular hurt the conversation of abortion as healthcare. And it hurts the conversation of just healthcare and people needing access to healthcare. So what that conversation with that council member did was that it ignited a fire that was already lit in Temecula residents, and they showed up in force at the next council meeting and they said, no, your comments are wrong. Your thoughts on abortion access are wrong. And we want to ensure that Temecula does not become a sanctuary city for the unborn, but that it continues to be a city that serves all of its residents and that continues to talk about healthcare for its residents and the needs that residents have around healthcare. One of the things that social media and the media helped do in this case in Temecula is that it elevated the conversation all the way up to the Attorney General. The Attorney General, Rob Bonta, sent a letter to Councilmember Alexander and the City Council and the City Attorney and the City Manager of Temecula and said, we're sorry, but in California, the law of the land is abortion is healthcare. Abortion access is available to everyone, and abortion is safe and legal and protected in this state. The buzz, all of that information that had come out, whether it was erroneous or otherwise, helped elevate this issue in Temecula all the way to Sacramento to the state attorney general, which really helped protect access to healthcare in the city of Temecula, right? 2 weeks after that, Councilmember Alexander once more says, we want to oppose Proposition 1. And so we're sitting here and we're like, oh man, what is going to happen now? Well, guess what? The city manager and the city attorney said, we don't want to go down that rabbit hole again. We just heard from our residents who told us, no, we do not want these anti-abortion commentaries, rhetorics, laws on our books. Let's continue our council meeting. Let's continue the business of the city. And so it was very interesting to see how the media played and social media played a very large role, both in informing people and passing out disinformation, and how people were able to sort that out and come and show up in person and advocate for healthcare in their communities. That is a very positive outcome when residents really take a look at what's in front of them and say, actually, no, this is not right. This is not information. This is not fact, right? And they're able to act on that fact.
That's amazing to hear. I think when you hear, that kind of grassroots, when you actually hear people coming together to fight for what they believe, we focus on, on these kinds of topics, we usually focus on the negative, and there is a lot of negative to focus on, and it's important to address that. But I think it's also important to look at the positives that are going on. It really makes you think that, hey, we're in a really tough position, but there is a way out. And on that note, I think that's a good transition because our midterms are coming up in just a few weeks. This is probably an obvious question, but how significant are these midterm elections in regards specifically to reproductive rights?
Very significant. on the ballot this election, November 8th, is Proposition 1. Proposition 1 would add the right to abortion access and contraception access to our state constitution. And so if I just told you, right, that we have all of these protections and laws on the books around abortion access, why do we need it on our constitution? The reason why we need access to abortion care and contraception is because the tides change. Political structures change. Who's in office changes as the years go on, as our systems change, as people get more involved in democracy, right? We want to ensure that no matter who or what political party is in power, abortion care and contraception are both protected in the state of California. That if another DOPS decision comes down in California, it won't matter what the state legislation says, the voters of California have chosen to protect abortion access. And so it is essential that our state continue to have the strongest laws in the country so that we can continue to become, so that we can continue to be a beacon of hope for those who need access to essential healthcare, no matter where in the country they might be. We also have an opportunity this midterm election to vote for champions who uphold and expand reproductive health care and rights at every level of government. And I really genuinely do mean every level of government. Our school boards, they get to decide on comprehensive sexual health education. Our cities, like I just gave the example of Temecula, right? They get to decide to be a beacon and a place where abortion access can happen through healthcare. At the statewide level, our state legislatures ensure protections for in-state patients, out-of-state patients. They move money to ensure that there's actual funds for a website where people can go and get information on their nearest health center. And our state legislatures, like the governor, moving things in their budgets around to ensure that there's money for reproductive care, ensuring that they're signing laws that will protect patients in California, outside of California, our healthcare physicians, our health centers, right? And so if you want to learn more about what candidates Planned Parenthood Action Fund of the Pacific Southwest has endorsed, you can check out our voter guide at voteforchoice.org/voter guide. We do a very thorough endorsement process, and you can find out who we've endorsed at our voter guide.
Yeah, thank you so much. You had mentioned the including getting some abortion rights included in the Constitution, and from what I've learned, this last May I was in our AP government class in high school, and one of the essay questions was write about a precedent that you know is like something you can believe in, and my classmates and we all wrote about Roe v. Wade, and then that summer after senior year we were all like, what just happened? And you were talking about shock earlier, and we were all like, wow, we just wrote about this and now it's no longer there. And like I think especially for like students and other people our age in this age range, it's something so fundamental to what we believe in, what we see as something that we want to have as a right protected. And leading off of that, what can we do to protect reproductive rights in California and nationally?
Yeah.
Just to see where that goes. Yeah.
I think you're right. In the place that we are at, being able to say abortion, just that, right, is very important. Allowing space and time for people to share their abortion stories is also very important, right? Creating events, cafecitos, community meetings, right? Places where people can have conversations around abortion access, feel supported around abortion access, and come to that place of intersectionality where abortion access is healthcare and healthcare is a human right and everyone deserves access to, right? Like helping us connect some of those dots, creating those spaces, that's very important. Voting, it goes without saying, right? Where we are today, the power has shifted from a protected federal right to a protected or unprotected state right. And so it is very important that we all go out and vote and that we lead with our values, right? That we vote with our values, that we show up authentically to the ballot box and say, this is why I'm voting for these folks, right? This is who I feel is going to protect us. And in that same realm, getting to know who we're voting for before and after they're elected into office, making sure that folks' values not just align with ours, but that their values and our values can be accountable in the same way, right? I'm voting for you because you're going to protect my access to healthcare, and you're going to continue voting at the state level, at the local level, to protect my right to healthcare. And then lastly, I mentioned earlier how abortion funds have really helped fill some of those small gaps and large gaps in patients receiving access. That's not just for patients who are coming from out of state, but patients who might be in state and might need a little bit of support somewhere along the line of their abortion access journey. You can learn more about donating to the Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest Abortion Fund at plan.org/take action. And there's definitely different ways to get involved. There is always something going on at Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest. So if you'd like to volunteer with us, let us know. We have a vetting process that we go through with our volunteers. You'll talk to one of our organizers and they'll put you in to do something, anything, right? Whether it looks like marching at Pride or joining us at a health fair or making calls for some of those elected endorsed officials. It's very, very important to get involved. If reproductive justice, reproductive access is what calls you, there are many different ways to heed that call, right? Including working for an abortion provider, right? Planned Parenthood or otherwise. There are many healthcare careers, many healthcare pathways. I'm a political scientist, poli-sci major, and I'm working for a healthcare organization. There is room for all of us, right? We have our education staff who goes out to schools and teaches on comprehensive sexual education, right? There is room for everyone under the reproductive justice, reproductive healthcare access umbrella. So if you want it, it's there, right? There's lots to do, lots to do, and lots to protect under the reproductive healthcare umbrella.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Borja. You actually answered my final question. I was going to ask what can we do? What can an average student or anybody really do in terms of getting involved? And it's great to hear that there are so many ways to get involved. And I think go ahead.
I will share that at UCR, there is a Planned Parenthood Generation Action chapter. You can find us on Instagram at ppga at UCR, ppga@UCR. Is our Instagram handle, and the club does all sorts of things, from the wellness vending machine that you have at your gym. That was one of the very large efforts that the students underwent. We had drive-throughs during the pandemic to help students get their menstrual products, Plan B products. There's a lot going on with the PPGA, the Generation Action chapter at UCR. That's definitely one of the best and closest ways to get in touch with Planned Parenthood. They're on your campus. You don't have to leave campus, right? And we do all sorts of good work on your campus.
That's great to hear. I love hearing it. And I think I mentioned this earlier as well. But in terms of, we always talk about what's actually happened and the fact that millions of women are now facing massive challenges. But again, I think it's super important to also focus on the positives that are being done. And the fact that California has taken a stand. I think that's really important to highlight because, I'm sure you've also encountered this when you focus so much on the negatives, you kind of get into the weeds and you miss the fact that there are actually still a lot of people that are fighting for this right. And I think it's just so important that we maintain that. I did want to give Dinara a chance to ask a final question before we end the episode, though.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I was just gonna ask if you had any hopeful words for anyone who's in a state that's already banned abortions, and anything you want to say to them and any advice you would give.
Yeah. At Planned Parenthood, we will keep fighting for all people so they can be free to make decisions of when and if they want to have a family. We understand the intersectionalities between the LGBTQ community continuing to be ostracized, continuing to be told that you can't say the word gay, right? Continuing to lack access to healthcare. We understand the plight of people of color, under-resourced communities, communities who have been designed in particular ways where access to healthcare is not a priority for their local government. We understand the plight of students who continue to graduate year after year without actually having received comprehensive sexual health education that would empower them to make decisions for themselves. And so at Planned Parenthood, the last note that I can give is just one of like hope, right? We are with you. We believe in care no matter what. It's our slogan, right? Care no matter what. And we believe it. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're documented or undocumented, young or old or anywhere in between, right? We will care for you no matter what. Please visit us. Please see Planned Parenthood as a beacon of hope, both in our health centers and outside of our health centers. And just like us, there are many, many across the state of California, many organizations, many people, many elected officials who stand with patients, who stand for reproductive justice, who will continue to fight for abortion access for those who are in our state, those who are out of our state. It is an unfortunate but very crucial time for people in our communities, just like the people in Temecula did, right? They stood up and they said, in my backyard, we believe that abortion care is healthcare, and that's how we're going to keep it. So yeah, for Planned Parenthood, it's a very important time. As much as it is challenging, it's important for people in our communities to know that we will stand with them, just the many, many different ways that people have stood with Planned Parenthood. We're here to provide care no matter what, and to anyone who might need it across California and in our communities.
Thank you so much, Ms. Borja. I think that's the perfect note to end on. Like you mentioned, an unfortunate but crucial time. And everyone can get involved and help out, even in little ways. It goes a long way to actually come together and fight for something that we believe in. Thank you so much. It was an honor to have you on here today to talk about one of the most important issues. And I'm sure after midterms, there will be a lot of changes, and no one can predict what's going to happen, but I think it's really great to talk about this. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you both. I appreciate your time and your invitation.